Okay, good morning. Welcome to the, May 2nd edition of Wake Up Newport. I'm Steve Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. Standing in for Rush Hill, who's, I think he's in Budapest this morning or somewhere. So I'll be doing the MC duties this morning. So now that we've dispensed with that, I don't think any other dignitaries have walked in since. Oh, actually, Howard Herzog, Civil Service Board member. Howard, wave. He works with my sister on the Civil Service Board. So I will introduce our speaker, who is quite distinguished, and he has quite a bio here, so we'll try and pare it down a little bit. Dr. Daniele Struppa is the 13th president of Chapman University, a position he assumed in September 2016. Dr. Struppa has a PhD in mathematics. You know, I was on the math team when I was in high school, but I always asked the questions. There was guys a lot smarter than me. I don't know. It was, I was always like the bench warmer for the math team. But loved math when I was a kid. PhD in mathematics from the University of Maryland in 1981, and originally joined Chapman University as the provost in July 2006 before assuming the position of chancellor in July 2007. Prior to coming to Chapman University, Dr. Struppa had a distinguished career as a professor of mathematics and occupied positions at the University of Milano in Italy, and you'll be able to tell that from his very, very slight accent. At the Scuola Normale Superiore, did I pronounce that? Superiore, in Pisa. I went to Pisa, I was on the tower. At the University of Calabria in Italy, and since 1987 at George Mason University, he's the author of more than 200 refereed publications. I don't think I've read 200 publications. And you've written 200. Wow. Refereed publications, including 10 books. And I have read 10 books, okay. And is the editor of several volumes. Dr. Struppa is a member of the National Academy of Inventors. Okay, I know you're going to talk about freedom of speech, but you have to tell us about one of your inventions. Okay, you promise? I want to hear about this. Inventors is the recipient of the Ellis Island Medal of Honor 2018 and has received several awards for his mathematical work, including the 2016 Cozzarelli Prize from the National Academy of Sciences. I give you Dr. Struppa.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Steve, for a very kind introduction. I already broke your thing here. Send me the bill. So this is my third time here. I'm very happy to be with you all. Thank you for coming. We've been now living, my wife and I and my children, we've been living now in Newport for 2 years, and we love it. I think the first time when I came here, we were just moving to Newport, and so now we've been there for a while, and we really enjoy living here. We enjoy so much that we just bought a place for my mother-in-law. So now we are all close together. Right, no, I know, that's, so we used to live in Irvine, and we bought a place for her in Irvine. Then we moved here, so my wife said, well, we should sell the place in Irvine and get her something close to us. So wherever we go, she goes. And I shouldn't be saying this in front of young children, but I've been married multiple times, and she's the very best mother-in-law I ever had. And so in the ranking, she's ranked number 1. And it's a long listing, so, it's... Anyway, so I'll talk about my inventions later, but so today's talk is about free speech on campus, which is a topic I'm glad to see so many students here, because that's something that I want to make sure you in particular absorb. I don't know if you guys ever go on YouTube. Sometimes I get a friend that says, oh, there is a nice video on YouTube, go there. So you click, and you want to see the video, but before the video, they have a little ad. And you have to wait a certain number of seconds before you can click out. So that's what I'm going to do for you today here also. I have a little ad, which is a little update on Chapman. Captive audience, that's what they taught me since when I was a kid. When you have an opportunity, you're going to say what you want to say, and then you say what you promised you were going to say, which are two different things. So we're very excited. Chapman is doing really fantastic. I was talking with one of our alumni before. The university is growing by leaps and bounds in quality, not just in quantity. In a couple of months, we're going to open our new School of Engineering, the Fowler School of Engineering. It's going to be a really exceptional facility. You see the building behind you. The building is made of 3 bodies, and the 2 on the right are actually our Schmidt College of Science and Technology. The one on the left is our new engineering wing. Right now, if you walk in, that's what the wing looks like, but that's what it's going to look like when we have students. And we're going to have a very innovative curriculum, very different way of teaching, what we call the Grand Challenges Initiative. So we put students in front of very, very complicated problems from the very beginning, problems that we don't know the solution to, that nobody knows the solution to. And that becomes the stimulus for them to learn and becomes the guide for their entire curriculum. So the idea is really to make inventors out of each one of them. And the problems have to be complicated to be stimulating enough for them. We received a very important news in January. We moved into the R2 category. So, I was talking, our alum that I was having conversation before, remember when we were Chapman College. Then we became Chapman University, and we became a very distinguished master university, and now we moved definitely into the research area. And now we are in R2, which means essentially we are in the top 10% of research institutions in the country. That's a very, very difficult thing to achieve, and we did it through the hard work, I think, of all of our colleagues. Our ranking in terms of our reputation, and this is a US News World Report ranking, as you see now we are in the West, we are ranked number 5, which is obviously another very distinguished achievement. We become a research institution, we do very serious research with our faculty, our students, but we have not lost our passion and our commitment to the individualized attention for our students. So this picture is actually our first Rhodes Scholar. And you may know the Rhodes Scholarship is the most prestigious scholarship that a student can get. These are a scholarship that presidents of the United States receive, Supreme Justice. I mean, when you go through the list of people that receive Rhodes Scholarship, you find some of the most distinguished names in the world. Nobel Prizes, presidents, justices. And so we are proud to have our first student, Vidal, wonderful young man, first generation student. He pushed through with the support of the university, and now he's going to be going to Oxford, and his life is going to be completely different. And we are very proud of that. It's something that gives value to what we are doing as a social part of the society. And talking about the liberal arts, we haven't abandoned those either. We just received Phi Beta Kappa recognition. That's another very prestigious recognition, important for students, because if you graduate from a Phi Beta Kappa institution and you can put that on your CV, that adds to the value of your CV. Only 10% of the liberal arts institutions receive this achievement. So now you see an interesting thing. We have top 10% in the research area and top 10% as liberal art. So no matter how you look at us, we are doing really well, and we are very proud of this. We inducted our first students, and that's very exciting. So that's the end of the commercial. Now you can click on the skip ad. But I thought that this would be important, especially because I'm really happy about this idea that you have of having students here in the morning. They're probably happy because they skip going to class. I took one of my daughters to school now before coming here, and the other one I called the principal that we're going to be 1 hour late, so she was very excited about my talk here. She wants me to give a talk every day, so. So she can skip the first hour. So let me talk about the freedom of speech thing. You've read this on the newspapers all the time. Freedom of speech, first of all, the United States is a singular country. When the Constitution was written, some people were concerned that the Constitution was giving too much power to the government and would limit the power and the freedom of the individuals. And there was a big debate. I mean, those of you who have an interest in American history and in political science will know that the Founding Fathers were not really unanimous on this idea. One of the greatest voices in favor of free speech, and in general in favor of the Bill of Rights, was George Mason. I come from George Mason University, so we have a statue of him on campus, it's in Virginia, with him holding the Bill of Rights. The first Bill of Rights was actually the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so the idea that shows how the foresight of our Founding Father was that even when you put the best government in place, with the best intentions, eventually the government is going to try to take over and tell you what to do. And so they had a list of things that the government couldn't do. And the first list of things that they put was this one. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's an incredibly powerful statement. Not every country does that. Let's just look at the first sentence about religion. This means that all of us, we can decide to worship whatever God we decide we want to, or to worship none of them, and nobody can tell us what to do. You can be Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Baha'i, or you can decide that you don't believe in God, and that's fine too. Now, we know that there are lots of examples of countries that don't abide by this. You know, if you look at the theocracy in the Middle East, there are lots of countries where there is an official religion. But what you may not know, that even countries that seem to be very part of the big democratic group, like Italy, we used to have an official religion. Only recently it's been removed. In 1929, there was an agreement between the Italian government and the Holy See, you know, the Pope, and the Catholicism became the official religion in Italy, which meant every student had to go to Catholic classes in school. We had the crucifix in the classroom, and you know, Italy being the moderate place that it is, it wasn't really an oppressive regime. But I want to point out that this first sentence that for us is so obvious, the separation of state and church, is really not so everywhere else. And of course, the second one is what we're going to talk about mostly today, which is the freedom of speech and of the press. Why is freedom of speech so important? Well, there are lots of reasons I think that one could bring to it. The first, the most simple one, you know, listen, I'm a free citizen, I'm paying my taxes, I'm doing my job, I want to say whatever I want to say. So there is a very simple, non-philosophical reason, right? You can't tell me what to say. I want to argue about stuff, and if I don't like the president, I should be able to say so. If I don't like the mayor, I should be able to say so, and whatever. But there is a deeper reason, and the deeper reason is that we believe, I think those who wrote this believed, that freedom of speech is the only way to advance ideas and to challenge the status quo. Well, it is because of the freedom of speech that we had the founding fathers, but now we have fathers and mothers running the country. You know, we use this expression, the founding fathers. When Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Well, what he had in mind for men was actually men, not the way we would think of now. Now when we read those words, we think everybody in this room, men and women, regardless of color, regardless of wealth. When Thomas Jefferson wrote that, men meant white, meant landowner, and meant males. How did the transformation happen? The transformation happened because of free speech, because people were able to bring up issues, have debates, and through that conversation, sometimes heated conversation, sometimes in the form of peaceable assemblies, the country evolves. So we believe that the freedom of speech is fundamental as an instrument of a vibrant democracy. It doesn't mean we have to agree, but it means that we have the right to say each other what we think, and we should be able to challenge each other, even with ideas that may be very controversial. I think that that's why we think it's so important. Now, when I look at our young students here, there is nothing more important than free speech in a university. University is the place where, of all possible places, you should be able to express what you think. Now, let me point out that the amendment doesn't say the university should give you free speech. It says the Congress shall make no law. So as a private university in particular, we could say, well, you know, the Congress won't make any law, but we can make our own laws. And in our university, we don't want you to talk about this stuff, we don't want you to talk about this stuff, and you can only speak freely in this corner. But I think that places like Chapman and many other universities, to be true, believe that the principle is so strong that it needs to be applied everywhere. Certainly we want to apply it on our campus. Now, has this principle been challenged? Yes, throughout its history, there has been tremendous challenges to the principle, because I challenge, you'll never find anybody that says, I don't believe in free speech. Nobody will say that. But what they will say is, of course I believe in free speech, but, or of course I believe in free speech, except, well, that's what this principle says. There is no but and no except. If I tell you that I love my wife and my children, I don't need free speech to protect me from that. Everybody would agree and say, yeah, sure, Daniele, good job. Yeah, we love them too. But what I need free speech is when I say something that is controversial. That's the point of free speech, and that's the point that sometimes escapes people. There are many legal challenges, and I'm going to focus on one that, for me as an immigrant, is particularly important. And I say it because I was born in Italy. Thank you for pointing out my accent. They would have never called it otherwise. Why do you have to say that? I would have pretended I was from Oxford, so it's kind of a little too refined for you guys, but that's how we talk in Oxford. But so I was born in Italy, so I came to this country as a choice. I was a professor in Italy, I was the chairman of the math department, I didn't have to come. But I decided to come. I decided to come because I believed in what this country could do for me and, frankly, what I could do for the country. It's been a great partnership. That's why I'm the president of the university. That tells you something about the United States, right? This guy who's a president still has an accent and has come here relatively recently. But to me, the symbols of the country are important because I chose them. The flag, to me, is important. When I see the American flag, when I listen to the American anthem, I get choked up because I wasn't born here. I decided to. I left the country that I also love. So one of the issues that is very important, and that was debated greatly, was the issue of the burning of the flag. And there is a very important decision, 1989, Texas versus Johnson. So let me tell you what happened there. 1984, the Republican Convention is the Republican Convention that would reappoint, renominate, I should say, President Reagan and Vice President George H.W. Bush for the second term. Big protest, and we know from the First Amendment that people can peaceably protest, and we like that. One of the protesters, Mr. Johnson, a fairly young man, I should have put his picture, but I was working on a computer that didn't have internet access, but in the middle of the heat of the thing, somebody brings in the flag and he burns the flag. This is Texas, and he gets convicted for desecrating a symbol, a sacred symbol. I can't remember the special terminology. He sues because he claimed that he had the right, that there was a form of his expressing his expression. The thing makes it up to the Supreme Court. In 1989, the Supreme Court has to deliberate. And they deliberate 5-4 in favor of freedom of speech. That makes the burning of the flag a loud exercise of expression. The most beautiful thing, I'm Italian, so we get emotional about stuff. I'm going to read you the words that Justice Kennedy wrote when he concurred. Justice Kennedy was a conservative judge, but he concurred with this decision. But his words are so powerful that I hope especially our young students will read what this man said and will pay attention to the tremendous love that in these words appear for what this country is all about. These are just excerpts because, of course, you know how it goes in the Supreme Court. So there is a vote, then 5-4 win, then there is a dissenting opinion. In this case, Rehnquist was the one who wrote the dissenting opinion. And then sometimes, in rare cases, somebody that agrees with the decision wants to write his own stuff. And that's what Justice Kennedy did. Partly because I think people were expecting that he would vote against. So he wanted to explain how is it that somebody like me, conservative, country-loving, still voted in favor of that. So he said the following. I write not to qualify the word Justice Brennan chooses so well. Justice Brennan was the person who penned the decision. For he says with power all that is necessary to explain our ruling. I join his opinion without reservation, but with a keen sense that this case, like others before us from time to time, exact its personal toll. I like this, and we have 3 slides on his speech, on his writing. I like this because he shows something that we need to see in the people who run the country, which is their personal involvement. He's not just ruling, he's a man, and he's pulled by the decision that he has to make. And so in this humanity, I think he's recognized what is best about us. Then he continues, says, the hard fact is that sometimes we must make decisions we do not like. We make them because they're right in the sense that the law and the Constitution, as we see them, compel the result. And so great is our commitment to the process, that except in the rare case, we do not pause to express distaste for the result, perhaps for fear of undermining a value principle that dictates the decision. This is one of those rare cases. As I said, usually, the people who support the decision, that they don't have anything to say. The decision has been made, we won, we move on. But he said, no, because I really don't like the outcome, but I support it because it's the right thing. That's another sign of greatness that I wish we would see more often in the people who govern our country. You don't decide what you like or what you don't like. You decide what the law and the Constitution ask you to decide. And so he says, in this case, I have to tell you why I don't like it. I have to tell you why I did it. I want people to understand where I stand. And he says, those symbols often are what we ourselves make of them. The flag is constant in expressing beliefs Americans share, beliefs in law and peace and the freedom which sustains the human spirit. The case here today forces recognition of the cost to which those beliefs commit us. It is poignant but fundamental that the flag protects those who hold it in contempt. Wow. This is so powerful. It's so powerful, and I want people to remember this whenever we get into a discussion about free speech. It's fundamental that the flag protects those who hold it in contempt. That's the power of our collective coming together. And that's why I'm proud to have become an American, because I realized through this decision that it was the right decision. We are willing to accept an insult to an important symbol because we believe in what the symbol stands for. So that, to me, that's why I'm so passionate about free speech. I'm passionate because of people like Justice Kennedy. And the interesting thing is that the protest at which the first flag burning took place was against President Reagan. Justice Kennedy was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Reagan. So another tremendous example of intellectual independence. It is obvious that this man loves the Constitution and his country more than any temporary partisan affiliation. And that, to me, is an incredible thing. So what's happened that we keep having to talk about this? That's what is demoralizing sometimes. If you read the newspaper, you see how many times universities are trying to slap down free speech. And they do it with argument that Justice Kennedy could have used here. He could have said, hey, listen, free speech, of course, but the flag is the most important symbol we have. But he didn't say that. He said, I don't like that we burn the flag. I hate that we burn the flag. But the flag protects that act. And I think that the weakness that we see sometimes in universities is that instead of looking back at what Justice Kennedy said, we fall prey of this but variation. So of course we like free speech, but this is really too offensive. Well, no, that's the entire point of free speech is the protection of offensive speech. People say, yeah, but what about hate speech? Well, guess what? Hate speech is protected by the Constitution. And what is hate speech to you may not be to me or vice versa. As an immigrant who chose to come to this country, the burning of my flag is a form of, it really hurts me. I could say that's a form of hate towards those of us who crossed the ocean to come here. But it doesn't matter. Whether I like it or not, it's protected. So I wrote several op-eds on these. I wrote them on the Wall Street Journal and, of course, on the OC Register. Each one of them really has to do with different instances in which freedom of speech was being attacked. The first one, the one on the top, happened because we accepted some funding from the Koch Foundation. I don't know how well you know Koch Industries. They are one of the largest wealth conglomerates in the country, and they have a foundation who supports universities' research, and we received a significant donation from them and from two actually very wealthy donors that live in Newport Beach. And they decided to remain anonymous, and we were attacked because of disagreement of faculty against what the Koch Foundation's principles are. The Koch brothers are essentially libertarians, very free market. Their work is in fossil fuel. I mean, they're original. I mean, now they're a huge conglomerate. Fossil fuel was one of their starting points. So there is a resentment. And, there was an article in which I defended the fact that academic freedom should allow us to get the money from them as long as they don't tell us what to write, which is certainly not the case. The second case, the November 29, 2015, there was a person who was fired by, I think it was Claremont McKenna. She was a dean of students, and she got in trouble because she wrote actually a very reasonable email to students and regarding, I think, the use of what are now termed offensive costumes during Halloween. And she made the point that, during Halloween, it's maybe it's offensive, but, it's Halloween. Well, she lost her job because of that, so that article was about it. I don't remember what stimulated the third, but the last one was about BDS. That is something that I'm strongly opposed to. For those who don't know, BDS is the movement to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel for their policies in Palestine. And that to me is another violation of free speech and freedom of assembly. You know, if my student want to go to Israel, they should be able to go to Israel. If a professor wants to go to Israel or want to invite an Israeli faculty or wants to have a partnership with the University of Tel Aviv, they should be able to do so. So these were some of the other things. And finally, the last the situation in which I found myself, you see myself in the picture there, we had a big discussion a month ago, on a poster, The Birth of a Nation. I'll just take 1 minute. Do I have 1 minute? I don't want to hold you because I know everybody's got jobs to do. And I don't want the kids to miss too much school, mostly. I feel for them. You know, they have math waiting for them. You know, there is a math quiz today. You know, so we don't want to, we want to make sure they're there and they do all the math that they need to do. Yeah. So this is an example of how the importance of free speech as part of education. So there was a poster in our Dodge film of a movie called Birth of a Nation. And some students complained about it. They found it was offensive. I didn't know what the movie was, partly because I come from a different continent. This is not part of my natural history. The debate about it forced me to learn. So I watched the movie. I spent 3 hours. It's a very long movie. I spent 3 hours watching the movie. I read all the critical stuff that talks about the movie, and I became educated about the movie. Now, the movie is a racist movie, there is no doubt. I don't know how much time you want to hear about it, but it's a movie done in 1915 that essentially is credited, and that's a bad credit, with the resurrection of the KKK. The KKK, again, this is what I learned over the last month, is depicted in very positive ways in the movie, and so that brought some sort of a resurrection of the movement. So there is no doubt that the movie is very racist. In fact, if you ever watch it, it's available for free on YouTube. You have 3 hours. I have to warn you, it's black and white and silent. So 3 hours of a black and white silent movie, it's a little bit of a commitment. But you see what I mean when I say that it's very racist, and it portrays things in a way that we find disgusting. But what I thought it was actually helpful was the entire discussion that the university engaged in. At the end, the faculty decided that they didn't want the poster in their building, and so that's their right, and they decided to remove it. But I think that what I still contend that was very positive about this is that lots of people learn about it. I learned about it. And even though I can't tell my student, I bet you did too, I bet they did too. I bet many of them had never seen the movie. They only heard that it's a terrible movie. Well, it is a terrible movie, but you have to watch it to say it's a terrible movie. You can't say because your friend told you it's a terrible movie. You have to watch the thing, you have to understand why, and you have to reflect. This is a movie that is in the National Film Registry at the Library of Congress. So then you have to ask your question, okay, why is the movie there? So you see how from the debate, from the complexity and the anger, a lot of learning comes out. And that's my, if you want, this is my poster for why freedom of speech is so important. By the anger and the concerns and the protest, and I was with a Black Student Union student until 1 o'clock in the morning, from 10 to 1. We talked and debated and argued. We all learned a lot out of that. And that, to me, is the point of the freedom of speech. The point of freedom of speech is that it forces us to face things that we wouldn't otherwise be facing. We recently received a very general donation. Again, I think it's from a gentleman two gentlemen in Newport Beach. We are creating a new center for free expression in the School of Communication, something we are very proud of. And before I end, I have to answer your question, one of my inventions. So what I do is something called signal processing. In other words, you take signals, like voice or images, and you process them, which means you compress them, transmit them, rebuild them, and I study all those kind of phenomena. One of the things we do is to use that to be able to understand what happens in cancerous cells. And so we have a patent, for example, that allows us to look at the behavior of the cell, look at which proteins are being active in certain moments, and identify potential therapeutic targets. That's one example. So math can be applied to a lot of different things. Listen, thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope if any question, I'd be happy to take. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, no problem.
Well, that was a very powerful talk. Thank you, Daniele, for bringing us your thoughts on freedom of speech. And last but not least, next month at Wake Up Newport on June 6th, we're going to have Kathy Kramer. She's the director or the president of the Orange County Fairgrounds. So she's going to tell us about things happening over there as well as the upcoming fair this summer. So thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of your month, and we'll see you soon.